All right, thank you for being here. First and foremost, before I get deep into the statement, our staff and all who have assisted in this case really have kept at the forefront of our minds and the forefront of our work the family of this victim and certainly the victim. I don't want to lose sight of that throughout any of this. So on Monday, December 26th at 4:24 p.m., the Olmsted County Sheriff's deputies were dispatched to a suspicious situation located, or a call recorded to be a deceased person in the area of River Bluffs Lane and West River Road, northwest in Cascade Township. The reporting party on this call had been out walking her dog, and the dog started to pull her towards the ditch on West River Road, and as the caller got closer, they could see what they believed to be a person's arm sticking out of the snow in the ditch. It was approximately 20 to 25 feet away from the side of the road, down into an embankment off of the road. The caller then contacted law enforcement deputies who arrived a short time later and confirmed that the person, or that what the caller believed was a deceased adult female. Deputies established a perimeter around the area, and additional sheriff's office personnel immediately responded as well and began the investigation. Based on the observations of the deceased at that time, investigators and deputies immediately believed the case was a suspicious death. Immediately upon review of our open and possible missing person cases, it was also determined that this was not one of those cases. And none of those cases matched our victim's description with any additional evidence located at the scene. Sheriff's Office then, assisted by the Minnesota Bureau of Criminal Apprehension, the BCA, arrived on scene and coordinated the scene processing. Sheriff's Office investigators were then able to make a positive identification of the victim as Kimberly Ann Robinson, age 41, from both the Eyota and Rochester area. The Southern Minnesota Regional Medical Examiner's Office responded to the scene and took possession of Ms. Robinson so that the autopsy could then be conducted. Investigators from our office continued to work the case throughout the night, the next morning, and throughout the day, pretty much continuously until yesterday. The autopsy was then completed yesterday, Wednesday, December 28th, while we waited for the autopsy results, which, as you now know, can take several weeks. We believe, at least initially, that a firearm was used to cause the ultimate death of Ms. Robinson. We will not be commenting any further about anything related to that until we have the full autopsy results reported to us through the medical examiner's office. So based on our findings, and a person of interest was identified pretty early in the case, we began to work leads with all of that available information. Sheriff's Office investigators were able to make contact with the suspect's family and asked for their assistance in having the suspect, person of interest, come in and meet with our investigators. To the credit of the family and the suspect, he was then brought to the law enforcement center last night by a family member and was taken in for questioning. At the conclusion of that session, where the person refused or declined to give a statement, he was placed under arrest. At that same time, Sheriff's Office staff and assistants from Rochester Police Department, Violent Crime Enforcement Team, and the Minnesota BCA conducted 3 basically simultaneous search warrants on addresses in the city of Rochester to look for additional evidence involved in the case. The suspect in this case has been identified as Mustafa Rashad Bush, age 39, from Rochester. Mr. Bush was booked into the detention center on suspicion of murder in the 2nd degree. Specific charges will be determined and/or additional charges added as we continue through processing the evidence and conduct additional search warrants. Again, our condolences and our sympathies go out to the family and friends of Ms. Robinson, Their loss should be at the forefront of all our minds as we work through to find the answers to yet another needless and tragic loss of human life. So with me today, that concludes the statement. We will answer some questions, but before we do that, I want to turn it over to County Attorney Mark Ostrom for any comments that he might have this time.
Thank you, Sheriff. I really don't have any specific comments other than to offer my condolences as well to the family. Obviously, this is a very complex investigation, and there's a lot of work left to be done. So I'm going to just kind of hold off any comments until we get closer to the completion of that investigation.
If there's any questions, we'll take them, but again, I'm not going to comment or be able to comment at all on any further investigation or any specifics in what we believe how the crime may have occurred. So if there's any questions, we'll take them. And
I have a question. Bush was involved in a murder in 2006 of Ray Robinson, but he was let out early. Do we know why he was let out early and when?
at this time, I don't have that.
The information I have available, it's public information. He was convicted in early 2007, sentenced. My understanding is he completed the detention time portion of that prison sentence in about March of 2020. It was not an earlier release or anything like that. To my understanding, it was just a typical Department of Corrections release.
So released March 2020?
That's my understanding.
Okay, and released because the sentence was completed?
Typically, when you are sentenced to prison, you serve 2/3 in the facility and 1/3 on supervised release. He had served that 2/3 at that point.
Well, knowing he had this prior conviction and was convicted of this earlier, does this gonna affect at all this case?
I think it's way, way, way too early to comment about whether or not that information would be used at all in the case.
Okay.
What can you tell us about Robinson's and Bush's relationship, how they knew each other?
I know they were acquainted, and I don't know that I don't get too much into the extent of that. Obviously, they were acquainted, and at some point over the weekend and Christmas holiday, they were together.
Do we know how long she was in that ditch for, or I guess when time death was?
Yeah, that's one of the things, I made an extra note and I didn't cover that. That's one of the things that's going on, and it would be helpful if you could pass that out, is that there's still a lot of work to be done. And our investigators, if there are other people that know of Mr. Bush and Ms. Robinson and know of their whereabouts throughout the Christmas holiday weekend, we'd be happy to hear about that. So we're still really looking at trying to fine tune that timeline so that we can be more specific on that. But right now, I can't be very specific at all as to how long she was there or when it actually occurred, really, or even where it actually occurred at this point.
And I know you said there was a firearm involved, and I know you can't really speak on that too much, but can you at least tell us where maybe a wound may have been on the body?
No, I'm not gonna comment on that. That's medical examiner information there. Thank you.
How were you able to identify Bush as a person of interest?
I would say from both, all of our people that were working on it, we keep a pretty good track of people. And I think it was just really good investigative techniques that brought that forward pretty early in the investigation as to who may have had some association with Ms. Robinson. So, and as they went forward, it clearly the focus became on Mr. Bush.
I know that in a previous case, you guys had used, and I don't, not to, I guess, hinder the investigation, but in previous cases, in a similar case as well, you guys used cell phone data to kind of pinpoint where the individuals were, I guess, close enough to make an arrest. Can you guys speak at all if maybe that technique was used?
Again, that's way, way too early as to how much involved that investigation was, but I will tell you that everybody that was involved was using every opportunity they could to figure out who was involved and where they possibly could have been.
What sort of charges are you looking at bringing upon this?
You know, again, it's super early in the conversation. As I indicated, Mr. Bush is on supervised release from the Department of Corrections. My understanding is that he will be held on that supervised release at least for a period of time. The investigation is very complex. We're in the early stages of it, so I really can't comment on what charges could be developed out of that.
Do you know when he would make his first appearance?
At this point, it won't be until next week, Tuesday or Wednesday. Again, the Department of Corrections is placing an apprehension order on him.
Do you suspect he's the only one involved in moving the body?
At this point, that's investigative work. We'll figure that out. It's always possible. All right, thank you very much.
Sorry, one more question. Could you just go into any detail you can about the search warrants, specifically as it relates to the firearm?
Well, obviously, that was developed, like we said, from the preliminary information out of the autopsy. So obviously, looking for a firearm would be a factor in that for sure, so. But there's a whole lot of other things that go into that, so, yeah, there's no question we'd be looking for a firearm. All right, thank you very much.